Oh, hi. So, what brought you here today? A riveting monologue, perhaps? Well, I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you today, but there is no monologue today. Why? Well, because honestly, what more do you need to hear about the state of things in Nigeria? Prices are soaring, fuel queues are still here and about, so what else do you need to know? You already heard about the fire at the Ikeja fueling station on Friday now, didn't you? A few Nigerians lost their livelihoods as their means of living went up in flames. Or perhaps you already heard about the protests that ended in a frustrating, some will argue, anticlimax. A protest end marked by a sense of disappointment. What began as a powerful movement filled with the promise of change and a brighter future gradually kind of like lost momentum. But you know why? Despite the initial fervor and widespread participation, the protests concluded with fewer supporters than they started with. The hopes of many were dashed as the movement fizzled out, leaving behind a trail of unfulfilled promises, unresolved grievances, and also a lingering sense of disappointment among participants and supporters. However, I bet you already know that despite the disheartening conclusions of the End Bad Governance protest, the proponents of the movement did not give up. They called for more effective extensions of the campaign and vowed to pursue even larger movements in the future. October 1st, they said. But I guess you already knew that. You also know that 21 lives were lost in the struggle. The Russian flag was hoisted, and then there was the president's response. Oh, let's talk about the speech. A response to the protest that was widely criticized as disconnected from the realities on the ground and failing to acknowledge the depth of public frustration or offer even concrete solutions to the issues that ignited the protest. Many felt that his speech was tone deaf and lacked urgency and empathy expected from a leader in such a critical time as now in Nigeria. So the president's lackluster address only fueled further disappointment as it seemed out of touch with the demands and expectations of the Nigerian people. But you knew that already, so hey. Or did you miss the part where children, yes, children were actually remanded for protesting? That's how deep the discontent ran, that even kids were out in the streets to tell how disappointed they were in a system that's left them hungry and with nowhere to run. But before you lose all hope, let's take a moment to remember that this last week, or rather this week we're entering into, will mark World Youth Day, a day set aside as a solemn reminder of the global outcry led by young people who are demanding a better and fairer world. So this is not just a day of commemoration, it's also a day, a beacon of hope, if you could say. If anyone has the power to steer this ship through stormy waters, it's the youth. So the time has come to note that the promises of those who came before us might only be fulfilled if they, the leaders, are held accountable by them, the youth. It's time to build a future that not only serves just you, the youth, but also rights the wrongs of generations past. So here, the world is watching, and history will remember what you do. So we stand at a crossroad where the energy, resilience, and passion of the youth can redefine the future. The stage is set, and with it comes the responsibility to shape a world that is just, equitable, and full of opportunities, not just for yourselves as the youth, but those who follow in your footsteps. So as we commemorate World Youth Day this week, as we're entering into it, let's carry this hope in our hearts and turn it into action. Let's prove that youth are not just the leaders of tomorrow, but the change makers of today. So no, this is not a monologue per se, just a heartfelt appeal to every youth out there to get more involved in governance, or at least gear up to hold those in governance to account. And with that resolve, you're ready for the show. Not a monologue per se, no. It's just a continued call for us to strive for a better world. My name is Mazino Appeal, and I have with me my trusty co-host, Judith Atibi. Hey, Judith.
Hey.
Are we considering you part of the youth today?
Yes, sir, of course.
So we're celebrating
forever young.
Celebrating you this week, I guess.
Of course.
Well, it's all good. Welcome to the show. Together, we're welcoming you and everybody across the world to a great Sunday morning here on Breakfast Extra.
Oh, it's a very good morning to you and a welcome to Breakfast Headlines, or rather Breakfast Extra right here for a Sunday. Well, there it is. It's headlines, by the way. But hey, welcome and good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast Extra. Mazzino said that wasn't a monologue. I don't know what that was.
It was an appeal. Mass appeal. It was a mass appeal.
It was a mass appeal, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all of my forever young youth at home. Happy World Youth Week to you.
I think I'm gone past that.
I beg you.
I think I am gone past that. I will not tell the figure, but yeah, you guys go ahead.
But anyway, we're about to bring you the headlines, the front pages of headlines this morning. And during the course of today's show, we'll be touching on some very crucial stories, including the recent remands of minors to young people's homes, sparking debate on juvenile justice in Plateau State. We'll also analyze, perspectives on President Tinubu's speech regarding the protests, and of course, the very tragic fire at an Ikeja fueling station. Plus, like I said, we'll be commemorating World Youth Day, and we'll discuss its significance in light of recent events. And so, I would say, do not miss our conversation because we have quite an insightful guest as well. And also, we're going to be talking about Chidinma Adesina's withdrawal from Miss South Africa pageant. Because now they got a European.
A lot is happening behind that. Well, we're going to talk about it, if not today, then next week.
Absolutely. But first, let us bring you our headlines, our front page. And the very first one we'll pick up today for you is the Sunday Times. And of course, the very headline that jumps at you there: how foreign interests are impeding productivity in Nigeria's oil industry. Experts advocate innovative ways to address food inflation, disguised as NGOs preaching energy transition commitment. That one there is on the Sunday Times. At the bottom there, 2024 Paris Olympics, Nigerian athletes return without a medal. And right next to it, we are duty bound to defend our democracy. And that's from CAS there. I'm sure that's the chief CAS. I'll just leave it there. At the bottom there, anxiety in local government councils as EFCC launches probe into financial transactions. And of course, right next to it, Ohaneze opens up on leadership tussle after Iwanya's death. And all of that you can find on the Sunday Times.
And up next will be the Sunday Independent for this morning. Stakeholders outline priorities. Oh, hang on a second. I'm being corrected there. It's going to be the Sunday Vanguard for this morning. And for the front page of the Sunday Vanguard, you'd meet this headline. We've gone back to the sun. All right, this is funny. Guys, stick with me here. Guys. Which is it? It's going to be the
Sunday
Vanguard. So Sunday Vanguard, hunger in the land, confusion over 740 truckloads of rice palliative for 36 states, Abuja. The writers there read, we aren't expecting any consignments after the one received in March, say Lagos and Taraba, Delta, Niger, Plateau, Zamfara and Abia. No food palliative received in July. Did you hear? And we got it. Kano, Oyo, Akwa Ibom, Rivers and Bayelsa say. Now, right under the big headline for the Vanguard is Elumelu was denied 45% stake in Nigeria's oil field. This dates back. That's on page 27. And end bad governance, why the North is angry. Join protests. A very interesting writer here. NEF spokesman explains Northerners' participation after shunning NSAS protests under Buhari in 2020 and how Ohaneze stopped Igbo participation by Chekwas Okoreche at the very top. Billionaire kidnappers. Police unmask sharp shooter last operation in Lagos supermarket. And under that, NLC rejects police explanation for raid on headquarters. Still not sure which security operatives it was. They're still debating on that one. I guess maybe the week will unfold details. Protesters threaten to return as demonstrations end 10 days after. We'll talk about that one.
We move now to Sunday Independent, which is going to be our final paper for today. Stakeholders outline priorities for FG as protesters regroup, call for policy review, call out of hunger eradication measures, canvasses elimination of lavish lifestyle by public servants. Leakages, you can find that story on page 2. Edo poll, Akpata Ighodalo disagree on the state's debt profile, FDI. That story is on page 6. When you move now to the next one, right there next to it is enforce the PIA Act. Dangote urges NUPRC. That story is on page 7. Tension in Ondo, community over New Yam Festival. That story is on page 2. We go to the bottom there, flying Russian flags. Youths not happy with Tinubu's administration. Analysts say fifth columnist at work to embarrass government. Insists culprits face full weight of the law. You can find that story on page 2. Ekpa wants Anyoku against sabotaging Biafran independence. That story is on page 2. At the bottom there, economic crunch, federal government urged to fish out oil cabal saboteurs, and that story is also on page 2 as well. Aviation agencies on verge of collapse, Nuet warns. I can find all that and more on the Sunday Independent. I think that's all of the stories, so all of the front pages we're going to be taking, all of the newspaper we're going to be taking for today, front pages we're going to be taking today, so make sure to pick up the Sunday Independent to get some bit of light reading, although those headlines don't look light.
No, heavy with
very
beef.
heavy.
Let's put it that way. But that's as much as we could take. But we want to do perspectives first today, starting the show with a look at what people thought about the president's speech from after he gave it. Many people thought that it was lackluster. Some, perhaps in certain quarters, thought it was just adequate. And the fact that he came out when he did to address the crowd, well, the Nigerian people might have been okay. But let's check out your response on Perspective.
Regarding the president, he didn't say anything meaningful. So he was supposed to address the matters on ground, not just by saying that we should calm down, because all the interviews I've been hearing is how to calm Nigerians down, but we need answers. We need answers to the problem. There are a problem of price of things going up, and there are also problem of insecurities, mostly the farmers, northern and everywhere in Nigeria, they are also facing insecurities too. So that's the issue we're supposed to touch in, than telling us to just calm, that we should have patience. How long do we want to have patience? Saying to us to have patience, do they also have patience? Because we are seeing politicians buying private jets, we are seeing them using money for their own personal needs and all that, so, but they are not having patience. So don't tell Nigerians to have patience. So that's what is my take.
I didn't feel like the protest was necessary because, I mean, judging from the NSAS protests, a lot of things have not still been recovered in Nigeria up to date. So having a protest is actually pointless because I feel like Nigerians should get to know that the government do not even give a shit about them. Like, even if you protest from now till God knows when, what they will do is what they will do. They will still keep looting our public funds and taking their children abroad. So, and there's something I said during the protest, like, na person wey don't chop the protest. If truly there's hunger in the land, you would sit down and think of possible ways to like maximize your income instead of going on the streets and protesting. Well, whenever I hear about the address by the president, I just laugh because what do you guys expect? Like, he wasn't going to do anything. So what do you expect? There's nothing to be done. It just came out and felt like, okay, let me just address the people and they'll be fine. So that's what he did. So I wasn't expecting anything serious to come out of the president's address. So I'm not surprised.
I did hear say president be there Nigeria. Now as protest start to come out, how they want take do that? How person want take say he want take solve problem when he not there, they see everything when they happen. It means he doesn't care. Yes, he doesn't care. Because even without telling himself, suppose do his own pass lock up, because now president he be. I mean, they forget say people plenty for his back.
I think they should have allowed the protest to go on peacefully. Yeah, but it's so unfortunate. We see how it is and how it ends. That's the country where we find ourselves. Look for a better picture. The response is not what we expected from him. So we hope everything can they make amends for what is going on.
I'm actually indifferent about protest. I'm not particularly against it. I'm not also in support of it. No, I'm not in support because it might not really, a lot of time protests end to turn violence. You know, you can, from the history, you can try it across the world. You can see most of the time protests tend to become violent. So that's my basic fear about it. But as regards concerns about what is actually going on in Nigeria, Nigeria must also express their feeling as well. So to balance it, that's where I have my own concern. Once it go violence like what we experience in the north, it's really turned violence, and quite a number of people have died. I'm sure the number of people that have died may probably be, the figures might actually be a lot higher than what they are even declaring. So that's the major thing. That's why I said Nigerians must express their feeling, but how are we sure it won't go? It will actually turn violent.
And that's what Nigerians are thinking out there. Quite frustrated. It seems to be the regular theme going across every single perspective that we got on today's perspectives. I don't know, do you agree, Judith?
Of course, all the analysts have said it, that he was not able to address the core issues, and what he did was reel out his achievements in the last 1 year. And sometimes we've seen over and over again that the government oftentimes, there's a bit of disconnect between the people and governance. So it's what it was to be expected. You know what I mean?
I have one phrase. Let them be eating.
Right.
We'll be enjoying. Or rather, let them be protesting. We'll be eating.
There we go.
Let's take a short break now. When we get back, we dive into our reports and our stories that we've got prepared for discussion on today's show. Stay tuned. It's a bit too soon to be back here, I know. But anyhow, welcome. It's the Strips this morning for a Sunday. We're doing it today. Now, here is where we bring you a weekly dose of humor and also insights through the art of editorial cartoons. In a world where it's often, all the doom and gloom, cartoons have a very unique ability to capture the essence of current affairs and make it creative. So today, we're going to delve into the latest happenings in Nigeria. Of course, everybody knows it's mostly about the protests from last week, and our cartoons for today are going to be showing us thus. So let's take a look at our first one, which I think might be from Business Day. I can see it right there. Business Day has this one, very interesting. Hunger protest, tell you what, I am not sure if this is the Russian or the Nigerian army flag, but I am sure none would favor me. Judith Atibi, we had this conversation yesterday and we're having that again today about the Russian flag. So I read a small article that talked about the similarities between the Russian flag and I think one army insignia and how it could be mistaken for the Nigerian army. So it's kind of like, what's the word? I can't remember the word. What's that word when you're pretending to be something else? I can't. Help me out, Judith. I don't know. But that's one reason they gave. Apart from that, the talks of treason and sedition. But what did you tell me yesterday about the Russian flag? Or wasn't it you? I can't remember again. I'm getting old.
Oh, gosh, Mazzino, you're killing me. All right, so the question is, what do I think about the Russian flag?
The use of the Russian flag. Yes, we did have this conversation.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did have the conversation. And I said that the persons who are flying the flag and they're calling for Russia's intervention honestly do not know what they're asking for. That's what I said. I said they don't know what they are asking for. And I think that we're not hungry enough. You know what I mean? Like how? And I think it's a colonial mentality that is a residual colonial mentality that we still have. And then we see this with some parts of Africa where you move from one overlord to another overlord. Like, why can't you handle your business yourself? This is a national problem. Why don't you solve it yourself? Why are you calling on Russia?
Yeah. That's from the Business Day. We still have one more from Business Day. It's still about the protest. Check this one out. I love the artist here. I love what he did with the instance here. It's like, be patient. I have sown good seeds for you to harvest. At the very top, a very familiar figure. I think the belly's a bit too big, but it's missing the insignia and the hat. But it might be there if you look very closely. But of course, you can see the impoverished people under. And the artist did something very interesting, Judith. Do you notice anything about the people down there?
Don't make me say it.
He depicted the suffering of the people with mostly northerners.
Yeah, because I noticed
saw it too.
I had
It's there for you to
hijabi,
see.
people in hijabi, but
Exactly.
like I didn't want to say it. I wanted you to say it.
They wanted me to get in trouble. But this is the thing. There seems to be a certain difference in the kind of suffering that people in the South go through, different from what people in the North or Northerners are going through. And that's the argument. And that's also what's defining the difference in, I don't want to use the word strategy or operations when it came to the protest, how far it went in the North compared to what we had here in the South, in Lagos especially. It was a bit more with fervor, if you ask me. But
They were quite fierce with their protests,
that's the
unlike
word.
here. I mean, I would say two reasons come to mind. Number one is that, for here in the Southwest, we have seen how protests have melted down into the most, one of the things that have tainted our modern day history and still up for debate. And we saw how the entirety of the nation was, silenced into, it's a different conversation entirely when it comes to accountability and what happened on 2020. But the other part of it is that the North as well has been hit significantly in the last 4 years with all the economic policies there. The 34 million Nigerians that are in poverty, a huge chunk of that number, a multidimensional poverty, a huge chunk of that number is from the North. Also, we know that the North is predominantly, Northerners are predominantly on the social register for the cash transfer scheme. So there's a lot of issues with the North. So I think those are the two reasons you would see them being more fierce with the protests as opposed to South.
Interesting artists. We got the detail. That's all I'm going to say. We got the detail. All right. I'm being told that we have very little time, so we're going to take just one more. And this one is, well, hang on a second. I don't want to take a business day one because we took this one before. Let's see. Oh, Judith, unfortunately, I have to wrap up because we have our guests for after. So that's as much as we can take inside of the strips. But perhaps maybe next week we'll try and bring you more for this segment. Thank you very much. Do stay tuned. Now we're going to talk about one of those issues from the North. We have a very special guest joining us. In fact, this time we're going to Plateau State. And we're visiting the issue of the curfew and the arrests that were made and remands of youth, or in this case, kids. We'll be back.
Our first big story today, it takes us to Plateau State, north-central Nigeria, where a troubling development has emerged. 8 minors have been remanded to the Young People's Home and 18 adults have been sent to the Jos Correctional Center, all in connection with the civil unrest that led to the imposition of a 24-hour curfew in the state. The involvement of children in such events raises serious questions about the state of our society and the measures being taken to address the root causes of these disturbances.
Now, the inclusion of minors in this situation is particularly concerning as it reflects the broader societal issues that may be driving young people into such action. The government's decision to remand these children has sparked widespread debate on juvenile justice, the responsibility of the state, and the need for more effective interventions to prevent such incidents in the future. So to help bring more light to this issue, we have with us Musa Atrams, the Commissioner for Information, Plateau State, to help us understand the government's stance and the steps being taken to address this complex situation. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Before we delve into our questions for today, I've been informed that we have a little bit of package we'd like to show our viewers. As we roll it, please take a look.
It all began Sunday when a group of youths hijacked the peaceful protest of the hashtag End Bad Governance in Nigeria, escalating to the extent of imposing a 24-hour curfew on Jos Bukuru Metropolis. The state government prosecuted the arrested suspects allegedly said to be behind the incident on Sunday and Monday in the Bauchi and Zololo Junction areas of Jos. The Chief State Counsel spoke on the incident.
You are well aware that there is a curfew and there was disobedience of the said curfew yesterday, and the police went because there was information. The police went and arrested these people violating the curfew because they are meant to stay indoors, and some of them were protesting, disturbing people, and they are not. It's just not one person, but so many of them. That's why we charge them for conspiracy.
While urging residents of Plateau to remain law-abiding, the State Commissioner for Information says government will not give in to any form of criminality.
They pleaded not guilty. So as a state that follows the law, that works within the ambit of the law, we're going to do this path until whether they are proven guilty or otherwise. And instead of just taking the laws into our hands, we told the path of law, which is the right way to go. And they've been arraigned before this magistrate court.
Apart from defiance of the 24-hour curfew, the 4-count charge leveled against these suspects include criminal conspiracy, membership of unlawful assembly, disturbance of public peace, and disturbance of public order. Justice Eric Narom of Magistrate Courts 8 and 9 adjourned the case to September 19 for further hearing. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyowe.
Our report there was filed by our correspondent in Jos, Plateau State, Chizoba Anyowe. And now we switch gears now to speak to our guest who is live via video chat, Mr. Oshams. Thank you so much for still being with us. I mean, I have to ask, from that video, it's very clear that this young minors did make a mistake. But what led to the decision to remand these minors, and what legal considerations were somewhat taken into account in doing this?
Thank you for having me this Sunday morning. It was the police that arrested them for defiling the curfew that was imposed on Jos Bukuru Metropolis. So finding the state council or the police legal team to address this matter would have been most appropriate. But I was in court where they were arraigned. They pleaded not guilty. In the first place, the curfew was dusk till dawn, a 24 hours curfew. And you saw people protesting on the day that the curfew was imposed. It's a sign that they have defied the curfew. And it will interest you to know that when people protest, they do not use and wield dangerous arms and ammunitions. And when the police went to those communities that defied this curfew imposed on Jos Bukuru Metropolis, they faced stiff resistance by these young people. This is not just the number. And it will interest you to know that apart from the 26 that we are arraigned, 25 more have joined the cluster. So we now have 51 that have been arraigned. And in law, if you're a minor, if you're not up to 18, you can also be arraigned. You can also be charged. And because they have not reached the 18 years old line, those of them that are minors are kept in the young people's home. Because you remember that even in the Nigerian Correctional Service, there's what you call the booster station, where your minors can be worked on. They can be given a new orientation. So when they pleaded not guilty, the magistrate court adjourned the sitting to the 19th of September. You don't expect them to go back to their homes, and you never can tell what will happen. So they have to be under the custody of the police. And police do not keep people for more than 48 hours in their custody. And the only place that people get remanded is the correctional centers or the young people's home, depending on their age grades. So basically, that is what happened.
Okay, Mr. Ashams, so I'm very concerned about these children especially. So I want to know exactly what state this young people's home is in, because we have ideas of what certain young people's homes across the country might look like, considering that these are minors and that they could have been influenced this way or that, not doing what they're doing under their own volition. In what state are these children kept in at the young people's homes, and for how long will they be there?
On the Plateau, we have a robust arrangement for young people, especially when they have this kind of situations. You will recall that not long ago, we've had our children that were being shipped out of Plateau State for different jobs outside Plateau. You recall that on a popular TV, a radio station in Abuja, the Brekete family, we saw where a lot of parents, a lot of children were taken from their homes. You see minors 7, 8 going to Lagos, going to Bayelsa, and sometimes even outside this country. When we bring them back to Jos, to Plateau State, we have a robust rehabilitation mechanism for all of that. Like you said, they could be influenced because they are minors. So it is an avenue for reorientation. It is an avenue for them to see life from another perspective. It will shock you to know that when I went to the court, I saw one of the minors and I took pity because I felt he is very, very young and doesn't deserve to go through this path. And lo and behold, the policeman told me that that's the most dangerous of all the 21, there were 25, 26 rather, they were paraded, that he will come to the commissioner of police's face and spit and tell him rubbish and say whatever he wanted to say. Well, after a day or two, he was extremely sober. So the young people's home might be a therapeutic center for these young people. We hope that the kind of training they've had, the kind of influence they've had that has pushed them into going against the state, that has pushed them into defiling a curfew imposed, they will change their bad and silly orientation. We just hope that this is going to be a turnaround for them as young people, and I will not expect to have a state where people were having peaceful protest. Then lo and behold, the stories were twisted and a lot of persons took to the streets and they wanted to maim people, to force people to join them in their venture. You cannot coax people to join you in whatever you're doing, whether positive or negative. People have the right to choose who they want to associate with, who they want to assemble with, and all of that. It is a constitutional right. Section 40 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, gives people the right for peaceful assembly, peaceful association, peaceful. Mark the word peaceful. Okay. But what happened on the 4th of August in some parts of Jos wasn't peaceful, because we've had peaceful protests around the old airport roundabout, which has become like our freedom park, which is like our arcade for peaceful demonstration. And a lot of people were pushing their fingers to Plateau, using it as a positive example for how a protest should be done. And lo and behold, the story changed. And if not for the curfew, we would have been singing a different song by now.
Right, Mr. Ashams, I have to ask, because we're pressed for time. For the minors, oftentimes when they are when you're in correctional centers and things like that, and sometimes when they go into the system, things can slip through the cracks, and one of them is the protection of their rights. What is the government doing to ensure that the minors' rights and their free will, and of course, just their human fundamental rights, are protected at this time? And you also talked about, having the Plateau State having a robust juvenile system, a remand home system. But what preventive measures are being put in place to ensure that such incidents such as these do not happen again, where children have to go into remand homes, and just so the system is those we sort of overlook are not overlooked?
The children are not in the correctional center, they're in the young people's home. You can see there is a twist, there's a difference between correctional center and a home. In that home, you are given parental care in case you lack at home. In that home, you are trained on how to look at things. And it will interest you to know that the Ministry for Women Affairs and Social Development is in charge of that home. Like I told you, we have repatriated our girls, our young people from different parts of the country and different parts of the world into that home for rehabilitation, for them to have a new view of life, for them to see life from a different angle and perspective. And we're hoping that this is not going to surface again. We've had engagements with traditional rulers, with community leaders, with clergies, with the youths, so that we'll have a new orientation, so that our young people...
All right, Mr. Ashams. Mr. Ashams, unfortunately, we are out of time, but you have given us very interesting insight into the situation there in Plateau State. I was going to ask regarding the responsibility of the parents, but we don't have time for that. But we'll get that message across when you do respond, perhaps maybe via other means. Thank you very much, Commissioner Ashams, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for having me on Breakfast Extra. God bless Plateau State.
Thank you. And of course, that was Mr. Ashams. He is the commissioner just to get that correctly, Mr. Musa Ashams is the Commissioner for Information, Plateau State, and he joined us today to talk about the remanding of minors in the young people's homes. We're going to take a short break. Coming up next is more on Here. Stay with us. Our report this morning is on the Ikeja fire from last week Friday in Lagos, where a devastating fire erupted at a fueling station, leaving 11 people injured and reducing 9 vehicles to charred remains. The fire, which broke out under unclear circumstances, caused panic and significant damage, highlighting the persistent safety challenges in Nigeria's densely populated urban areas like Lagos State.
So this incident raises pressing concerns about fire safety measures and emergency response protocols in such high-risk environments. As authorities work to understand the cause and prevent future occurrences, the community is left in, well, grappling with the aftermath of this tragedy. So to shed more light on the situation, we're joined by News Central correspondent Bernard Ikeja, who was on ground to cover the story. Bernard, good morning. Good to have you on again.
Good morning, guys. Good to be here all the time.
Great.
Yeah.
It's always good to see you on your tripod.
By the way, if you didn't know, Bernard's birthday was a couple of days ago, so although I've told him happy birthday.
Was the day of the fire? The day of the fire. Actually.
Oh.
No, I'm letting the world know so they can go and wish you a happy birthday. But hey, it's good to see you on a Sunday morning. Very sad incident that happened at Ikeja. Completely sad and heart-wrenching to even look at the images of that video. But I have to ask, what were the immediate causes of the fire, and how did it even just quickly spread so much, and the response to it?
Well, sadly, the immediate cause of the fire was a gas leak. When we got there, we were told that there was some kind of gas exchange that was ongoing. Now, my question is, if it truly was the gas exchange, that means it was intentional, and that was the wrong time to do that. But if it was a gas leak, then maybe there was no control. They had no control over it, because it was during the day. Customers were buying petrol, and we know how flammable both gas and petrol could be. The combination of the two cannot mean anything good, sadly. So, as we were told, there was some gas exchange. In the process, some gas, went loose. And of course, with gas, any little spark could ignite a flame. And flames from gas can spread as far as the fumes of the gas would go. So that's exactly the situation that we met on ground. The good thing is when we got there, well, first of all, on social media, we saw the videos, very graphic, very terrible. But when we got there, the fire had been put out by appropriate agencies. But of course, we could see the devastation that it caused. Like you mentioned, several people injured, vehicles burnt beyond recognition. There was a building behind the fuel station that was also partly burnt. The fuel station also suffered their own losses. In fact, there was a gentleman who suffered about 70-degree burns, and he was rushed to the hospital, amongst others. There was one on social media that we saw. We couldn't put that video up because it was too graphic. He was running away from the scene of the fire with, parts of his skin and his clothes burnt and peeling off of his body as he was running to safety, suggesting that he must have been right there when the explosion happened and got a huge impact from the fire.
Oh, that's very sad.
Very
You want to
sad.
clarify, this is, when you say gas now, this is cooking gas or is it CNG gas? Because I know most of these petrol stations are now equipped with CNG stations. So which was it?
So we couldn't even tell because we weren't given the full information. We were just told it was gas. And unfortunately, the tanker that apparently had the gas leak was burnt beyond recognition. So we couldn't make out what was inscribed on the tanker to know whether it was CNG or LPG, cooking gas. But then again, there was there was some information concealed. They concealed some information saying that they were going to carry out proper investigations and then let us know what exactly happened. But the little information we're given was just that it was gas.
And that's very, very sad indeed. Were you able to speak to the eyewitnesses, people around there, to get their own first-hand account of the situation?
Yes, we were, and I put that in the report that came out from that incident. There were two people we spoke to. There was a lady, first of all, who was buying petrol at the time. She said she was just trying to buy petrol. The attendant had already put the nozzle in her fuel tank when she saw the leak firsthand. Gas, normally, white fumes, spewing up into the air. And then she wanted to go back into her car to start the engine and quickly drive off. And they yelled at her not to start the engine. Because again, any ignition, anything could cause a fire. She didn't start the engine, but unfortunately, the fire still came. She lamented about what she had in her car, that she sells eggs and she lost her source of livelihood, which is the vehicle. And then there was another commercial bus driver who cried out to us, who's the father of 5. His vehicle, his Kurokwe bus, as they call it, is what he uses to feed his family. He too was buying petrol at the time.
All right, Bernard.
And when the fire came up, he just couldn't move.
Yeah.
Very sad indeed. Well, Bernard, many thanks for such a detailed and insightful coverage. And well done. It's been quite a week, or rather a week and a half for your team and yourself. It's been wonderful just seeing you guys on the ground and covering the entirety of the
longest story that she just told. But yeah, very interesting.
But well done so far. And thank you so much. And that was Bernard Ikeja. Thank you. He's our correspondent, and he joined us live to give us more insight on the fire that happened over the week. We take a short break, and we come back on the other side. Ms. Zino's on standby to bring you Breakfast Extra headlines. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome, and these are the headlines this morning. We begin the news in West Africa, Nigeria, as the protest ends day 10 yesterday. The supposed last day of the demonstrations, some residents of Gaskiya Dan Magaji area of Wusasa, Zaria in Kaduna State have raised fresh allegations against the Nigerian army. The residents alleged that apart from Ismail, whom the Nigerian army confessed to have erroneously killed in Samaru, other persons escaped with their lives after being shot at by soldiers. Among those who made these allegations include a grandmother located at number 88 Unguwan Fatika in Gaskiya Dan Magaji area of Zaria. The residents also revealed that there were other persons who lost their lives from gunshot wounds. Our correspondent Emmanuel Bagudu, who is in Zaria, joins us now to tell us about that on this package.
The measures adopted by some security operatives during the End Bad Governance protest in Katsina State have left some families mourning the death of their loved ones, while others are nursing severe gunshot injuries at home. And the families say these victims were not among the protesters. Here, Mukhtar Mohammed mourns the sudden death of his 21-year-old son, Shafiu, who was shot dead on August 5th in Katsina Metropolis while he was sitting far away from a major road where operatives of the DSS were chasing some protesters. His father is now appealing for the security operative that killed his son to be brought to justice. The measure, according to him, would serve as a deterrent to other trigger-happy security operatives.
Akan abin da aka yi mana yawa dan ba za mu yi haku daga nan ba morowa Allah ba muna so a bi mana haƙin mu kamar yadda duniya ta sani an yi mishi suna da haƙi sai ya gano kowa ya wannan abu saboda haka yadda aka yi mishi su ma su hukunta shi kamar yadda ya mishi wannan abu su gano shi kuma a nuna duniya dan wanda ke gaba kai sake irin waɗannan abubuwa a hukunta shi kamar da yake aka yi mishi shine babban mu abin da muke so babu wani abu da za su shirya takaicin mu idan mun gani radin da muke da shi zuciyar mu za ta yi ƙasa kuma mu samu zaman lafiya.
This 16-year-old boy who has just completed his secondary school education is lucky to survive the alleged shooting by the DSS, but he sustained gunshot wounds on his left leg. He narrates how he got shot while going on an errand.
Zan je wani shago na kaji da yake ina dan kiwon kaji. To ban kai ga ta lungun gidan dirbo ba. Kawai sai na ji halbi ga kawata. Juyowar da zan sai na ga halbi ne. Daga nan sai aka kai na asibiti. Lokacin ni ta haya nake yi. Sai na ga mutane sun rugo to juyowar da zan sai na ji an halban ga kawa. Sai na shiga wani lungu nan na tsaya. Sai wasu suka daukan suka kai na asibiti.
His mother says she sent him to inform his elder brother to lock up shop and leave because the protest had commenced and was fast escalating. Hamza Abubakar is another victim of the shooting on the 5th day of the protest in Katsina metropolis. He was shot in the stomach and the bullet exited through his back. His family is keeping the empty shell of the bullet that nearly killed their loved one. He is now receiving medical care at the Federal Teaching Hospital Katsina, where his family was asked to deposit the sum of 450,000 naira before treatment could commence. Residents of Katsina metropolis are calling for the prosecution of the security operatives involved in shooting at protesters with live bullets.
Kiran gare mu gwamnati ta yi mu adalci. Muna son justice. Ya kamata a ce duk wanda jami'in tsaro ya ɗau ran shi ba bi ta haƙƙi ba. Ya kamata gwamnati ta bi mai kadin shi. Shine adalci wanda za ka yi matalaka. Ba mu da wani gida wanda ya wuce ƙasar nan. Kuma ba mu da wasu wanda ya wuce wannan shugabannin. Muna neman adalci bisa ga wannan kisan gilla da aka yi wannan ɗan namu.
Interestingly and worrying is the fact that most of the victims are destitute who struggle daily to eke out a living.
Nigerian investigative journalist David Hundeyin has accused an international non-governmental organization, Dialogue Earth, of offering him an 800,000 naira bribe to smear the world's largest single-train refinery, Dangote Refinery. In a lengthy post on his X account on Saturday, August 10, 2024, Hundeyin detailed how the NGO reached out to him sometime last week with a brief that required him to write a negative review about the Dangote Refinery using climate change and environmental concerns as justifications. And still in the region, the Gambian military say it has arrested a former general who was an alleged member of the death squad under former dictator Yahya Jammeh. Former Brigadier General Borakoli is alleged to have belonged to a paramilitary unit nicknamed the Junglers, which has long been accused of carrying out extrajudicial killings and torture by the United Nations and rights groups. In a statement, the Gambia Armed Forces said Koli was arrested around midnight when he voluntarily surrendered himself to the GAF military police in Yundum barracks near the capital, Banjul. In East Africa, 8 people, including 2 children, were killed when a landfill in the Ugandan capital, Kampala, collapsed on Saturday. It was reported that some homes, people, and animals were engulfed in the landslide at the garbage dump in Kitizi, a district in the north of Kampala, after heavy rainfall. The Kampala Capital City Authority, which operates the landfill site, said 14 people had been rescued and taken to hospital. It did not disclose their conditions, however.
Nze nfiiriddwa abantu wano mu Kiteezi ku Kasasiro. Nfiiriddwa abantu kumpi 7 bafudde nyumba ekisasiro kyonna kibayise ne kibagwako era abaana omukyala bonna bafu naye tufunyeyo abana be baakavaayo naye abalala tebannalabika bakyasima tulabe oba tunaabafuna.
By local time, Ugandan's local time, that is 5 p.m., we had so far retrieved 12 dead bodies and conveyed them to the mortuary for post-mortem examination. We managed to rescue about 10 who were rescued alive. They are at Mulago Hospital and St. Stephen Hospital. At this time,
Ethiopian Airlines has signed a deal for the design of a new $6 billion airport described as the biggest in Africa. Ethiopian Airlines Chief Executive Mesfin Tesel said the new hub will be able to handle 100 million passengers a year once completed in 5 years. He said Ethiopian Airlines has signed a memorandum of understanding with Dubai-based consulting company DAR to develop the design for the airport, which will be 4 runways. And in North Africa, the Tunisian Election Board has announced that 3 candidates, including incumbent President Kais Saied, has been cleared to run in upcoming elections. 66-year-old Said was democratically elected in 2019, but orchestrated a sweeping power grab in 2021 and is now seeking another term in office in elections to be held on October 6th. Farouk Boska, president of the High Independent Authority for Elections, in a news conference said 14 other presidential hopefuls were barred from the race after not collecting enough endorsements.
المقبولين أوليا للانتخابات الرئاسية لسنة 2024 وعدد التزكيات الشعبية أو النيابية الصحيحة المقدمة من طرفهم باعتماد الترتيب الزمني لإيداع الترشحات كالآتي: السيد زهير بن محمد صالح المغزاوي وقدم في ملف ترشحه 11 تزكية نيابية صحيحة من مجلس نواب الشعب. السيد قيس بن المنصف سعيد وقدم في ملف ترشحه 248 ألفاً.
That's all the headlines this hour. Join us at 10 o'clock for more then. But in between that, we've got more Breakfast Extra coming your way.
And as the world marks International Youth Day 2024, the spotlight is on the significant role that young people play in driving socio-economic and technological change. Now, this year's theme emphasizes the need for inclusive policies that provide opportunities for all youth, regardless of their background or circumstances, to contribute to society's progress.
In Nigeria, where a large proportion of the population is under 30, the day takes on added importance. The challenges facing Nigerian youth, from unemployment and inadequate education to limited access to global opportunities, are immense. But so too is their potential to innovate and lead. This discussion will delve into the policies, programs, and initiatives designed to harness this potential and provide the support young Nigerians need to thrive.
And so to help us dive into these issues and discuss further, we're being joined, and to explore these issues, we're being joined by Mr. Adebayo Owoshina. He's a tech entrepreneur. We also have with us Mobolaji Abubakar Ogunlade. He is a Lagos State Commissioner for Youth and Social Development. And also joining us via video chat, we have Adenike Bamigbede. She is a social behavioral change communications expert. So quite the panel of this of discussions. Is that the words that we have here?
Good word.
That we have here today. And so, gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So let me start first of all with. Gonna start right here. What's that? I don't know this hand. Forgive me.
You're right, brother.
Sorry, right. So I mean, I'm gonna start with you with when it comes to challenges. You are a tech and an entrepreneur. So we are in a global village, a time with technological advancements, and still somehow we're still light years a bit backward. So what are some challenges that Nigerian youth face today, particularly in areas of tech and tech education?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. I think the first thing I would like to talk about would be archaic education system. You can imagine how people who are studying computer science in school are still being taught by lecturers who are working on write-ups that they had in the 70s. I remember in 300 level doing that. You can imagine when you get into the real world now, where you have AI, you have UI, UX. These are not things that have now been infiltrated into the education system. I think it's a major one. Another thing is when you go to up north, or a lot of the rural areas, you find out that internet penetration is not up there yet. And there's no way on earth you want to create a product or whatever it is and you want people in those areas to enjoy it. So I think those are the part of things that people are facing, especially youth right now.
And let me come to you, Honorable Commissioner. You are the Honorable Commissioner for Youth and Social Development, and International Youth Day. Lagos State is always at the center when it comes to Nigeria, the commercial hub of Nigeria. That means that we are densely populated and a largely young generation. What is the government doing? What are the policies and initiatives that the government is doing to address and to bridge the gap when it comes to the youth?
Well, thank you. Good morning once again, and thank you very much. Yes, Lagos Center of Excellence, State of Aquatic Splendor. There's a lot that we're doing, but I'll be very cheeky. I'm not going to let you know what we're doing for the International Youth Day. Okay. And I'll digress very quickly. A couple of days ago, one of our directors of youth, they're in a group, all the directors of youth all over Nigeria, and they were all talking about International Youth Day, and he was just mentioning it to me. And I said to him, I hope you did not throw in our plans. He was almost about to do it. And that's because this is Lagos. We like to do it differently. Of course, we have a lot planned for the entire week. The International Youth Day is actually tomorrow, August 12th. But because of the hiccups we had over the last week, we've had to push it forward. So we'll be rolling out a press conference tomorrow on the 12th of August to highlight what we're going to do for the remainder of the week. But it's fun-packed. It's technologically driven. The idea and the intention is to see how we can continue to bridge that gap, right? To continue to engage our youth and see how we can bring them closer with the click, because the whole theme is about click to progress. And when we say click is click at your finger. Yeah. So it's not about them coming, it's about us bringing it closer to the youth. And we're trying to do this across board, realizing that we have two types of youth, the formal and the informal. The formal are, well taken care of, but a lot of our programs and initiatives are, gearing towards the informal ones, which are the ones that we seem to be having a lot of challenges with at the moment. And then I'd just like to say very quickly on what Adebayo said when he mentioned about archaic system, but it's also, it's very important for me to mention that in Lagos, we've gone past that. Right, almost all of our teachers, we've given them tablets, also giving our schools tablets to the teachers and to the students, right? So it's very important to say that so that we can continue to drive that innovation and bring it closer to our youths.
That's a lot.
That's it. It is. Adenike, let me come to you and ask about basically the theme "click to progress." One thing that is that has proliferated with our stratosphere is social media. It's become rife. Everyone is on social media, and like the Honorable Commissioner said, clicking away, a click of a button, you have access to so much. But yet, there's still a lot that needs to be done when it comes to our youth. So I want you to talk more about the theme, click for progress, and how best can youth harness that to thrive for progress for their lives.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for having me. And I also want to use the opportunity to wish every young person happy International Youth Day. This is an opportunity for us to look within ourselves and come together and take advantage of the power of young people to push forward a positive agenda for Nigeria. So back to your question, I'm going to talk a bit about how digital media has been really great, how young people has leveraged it to do quite a lot of fantastic things, and what the future actually looks like if we are able to look at the positive part of it and harness it to sort of like collectively push a positive agenda for Nigeria. Yeah, so the world is getting smaller because of digital technology, and I'm right here in Lagos. I can see what's happening in other states of the country and also globally, and I can be able to learn. I can be able to join virtual training. I can be able to get certification across miles away. I can be able to connect with people, strangers, and get mentorship and grow as a person. So there's really quite a lot of opportunities, and with the fact that Nigeria has over half of the population are young people, and there is that curiosity for young people to want to take advantage of the current technology and to use it to better improve their lives. So I'm actually employing every young person that is listening to me right now to sort of let's channel our energy rightly and let's utilize the opportunities that we have, especially the digital technology, to sort of improve ourselves and improve our community and push a positive agenda. So this is what I would just say briefly at the moment. Yeah.
Mr. Denke, I still want to ask you a question regarding, I mean, being a behavioral scientist yourself, we have seen how the youths have a different orientation from what I don't know if you consider me still a youth, but what we have. What's responsible for that change in a digital age, and how can we impute that with the opportunities that we get as African youths, especially as Nigerian youths, into perhaps gaining from these opportunities, which are rare in themselves? But first off, why or what factors are responsible for the change in behavior for current youths, as we can see many things being championed by youths in today's society? Speaking of the protest that just ended, which in itself was driven by digital means, if you take a critical look at it.
Yeah, so when it comes to social factors, we oftentimes look at the cultural norms, we look at socio-economic status, we look at education, we look at family structure, family values, we look at even the media influence, and we look at government policies and laws. But to answer your question, I'm going to break it down into like 3 levels. Firstly, on a personal level, using this protest as a context, on a personal level, Nigerians are hungry, either young person or older person. Nigerians are hungry because of the status of the economy in the country. And on a societal level, there are negative social norms that perpetuate inequality, that cause discrimination and tear down the fabrics of our society. And these social norms include like things like corruption, which is an acceptable thing on the streets in Nigeria. And on a broader level, we look at government policies and how it's affecting people directly. So these government policies and laws, are they positively improving the lives of Nigerians? That's the question. And in a country where over 70% of the population are actually young people, they're not going to be quiet, and they're not going to be silent to respond to these government policies. They're going to use every resources and opportunities available to them to hear their opinion. And like I said earlier, that the digital media has been really, really instrumental, has brought us closer, has helped us to has helped us to connect better, and it's a platform that young people are using to sort of hear their opinion, to sort of to talk on a personal level how they are hungry, to talk about the societal issues, how corruption is affecting and corruption, nepotism, and everything that is associated to it is causing unemployment, is making the country to sort of go backward and not progress in their own opinion, and on a broader level to talk against the policies of the government. So what I'm seeing here is imbalance of information. So the youth people are hearing their voice, but the government policies, like we have the Commissioner of Youth here, talking about what is going to be happening this week, for instance, for the International Youth Day. Young people want to hear this, they want to see this. So if there's like a balance of information where it's not just one part hearing their opinion, those in power are also sharing the fantastic work they are doing, the policies that they are making that will positively influence people, sharing it in a way that people are able to understand and people are able to relate to it. I think that they might the extreme where the protest has gone right now, it might not really go there, in my own opinion.
Basically, meeting the youth where they are, which would be, in this case, digital. I'm going to come back inside the studio here. Commissioner, you heard what she said. I'll come back to you on that. But Adebayo here is an entrepreneur who actually has an app that he designed and all. And I wanted to specifically ask him regarding the challenges that youth face in today's Nigeria, where, I mean, first off, funding is a problem. The opportunities are a problem. Not just that, the global opportunities are also perhaps passing the youth by. How have you managed that in your endeavors, and how do you encourage youth to also take advantage of opportunities that you have as well? He's youthful.
He's youthful.
What do you think?
I don't know, I'm asking.
How do you navigate these challenges?
Okay, so here's the thing. For me, I think the youth just stay true to themselves. You have to be you. You have to know the challenge exactly that you are solving for. If you have the solution for it, then just be yourself in your corner. Something happened a couple of years ago where here in Lagos, I was just doing my thing, and I got a mail that I was nominated as one of top creative 100. This was in New York. This is something that came out of Lagos. If you stay true to your path, you know the solution you want to, you know the challenge you're trying to fix, you create a solution for it, just go after it and be your authentic self doing that.
Finding the problem and creating a solution
for it, yeah.
So we have population on our side. 70% of our population are youth. These opportunities are sparse. These problems are many, however. But how can I, and this is actually an extension to you, how can I be equipped for that opportunity? It's a problem, but it's an opportunity. How can I be equipped for it? And then you can think about that on the policy angle, Mr. Commissioner.
So the internet is very big. There's so much information everywhere. I think just slightly tilting your point of view from the negative part of social media, internet, to the positive part where you can learn, for you to be able to, even when the idea comes, you can build it. So I think for me, it would be for you to just re-strategize, refocus, and focus on the positive part of the internet. Yeah, essentially.
Are there policies that encourage young people to find these opportunities?
So there are several policies, and this is not even just specific to Lagos or to Nigeria. All over the world, you will find out there are policies. But just like Adebayo has said, you know, people need to be intentional. People need to go searching. People need to ask questions. People need to know what is available to them. The youth need to know what it is that their representatives, you know, should be able to give to them, right? So it's multidimensional. So if the youth don't even know what it is that they can ask for, then irrespective of the policies and procedures, we will not move forward. So we need to continuously do those advocacies, right? And the advocacy, it's, you know, this is an advocacy in itself. This conversation is a sort of advocacy. But then, you know, the youths also need to be able to know where to channel their energy and resources to get the required information to enable them to foster development.
What do you think about youth being stakeholders for change? Because for listening to Adenike's submission earlier, one of the things that I summarized from there was that, you know, for change to happen for their benefits, they have to be stakeholders. From the governance point of view, when policies and initiatives are made, how can the government in that policy making process be able to bring youth in there in that process for them to be stakeholders, so that that change, that initiative, that policy that you're making is tailor-made for youth?
Yeah, well, it is very important, of course, because if you're trying to prefer a solution to the youths need to be involved in the engagements, and there are several engagements that we need to have. We have various types of youths, like I mentioned earlier, but to make it a little bit more granular, for example, we have the creatives, we have the geeks, all right, and we have the typical youths. When you have the right set of people having the right set of conversations, and when I say the right set of people, the right types of stakeholders involved in the conversations and geared towards the youths, then it makes it a little bit easier. And it's all about engagement, right? And it's engagement on all levels. For example, what we're doing in Lagos, we're taking it to the grassroots. This morning, as I speak to you, we have 2 SSAs on youths to Mr. Governor in 2 different locations in Lagos, engaging the youths. And the ideology is when we have the right set of people sitting on the right tables in those offices, knowing what they're supposed to do and doing it, then the youths are being represented, their voices will then be heard, and then those conversations will be held across all levels, and the intention and hope is to get a solution.
So intentionality, but how then, if you are government and some representation government, and intentionality matters when it comes to this policy making and the process. So I have to ask again, just to reiterate, how then can the youth be brought in? What is the mechanism to bring them in that process, in that policy making process, so that they also have a stake at the table?
Yeah, which is why I'm saying engagement. So, for example, as Commissioner of Youth, recently, well, I'll let this out of the bag.
Finally,
International Youth Day, we are launching a technical working youth group for Lagos State. We have various youths across different sectors coming together for a collective effort, which is to quality representation of the youths. They are non-political. They are all doing well in their different fields. The idea is we have several representatives across board. And they would then be another interface, another layer between the general youths and the government, right? So if we have this sort of intentional, stakeholders that are created, the engagement continues. It's all about engagement and having the right conversations, for quality representation.
Judith, I have a question for Adenike.
Sure.
Adenike, so regarding the youth and policies like the Commissioner has just said, and inclusion into making of these policies, how far do you think Nigerian youth can go when you compare them to international standards or youth outside of Nigeria, especially in the Western world? Are we up to scratch? Are we up to the level of competition or competing with the outside youth? Adenike, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, obviously we know the answer to the question that we are not yet there compared to the global space. And when I say global space, I mean, there are different continents, and we might look at it in different ways. We might compare it with maybe the more developed countries or the other developing countries. But let's even start within West Africa. If we look at other West African countries, maybe like Ghana, and see how young people are, like, if you compare in terms of not just one or two people, I mean, collectively, what is the percentage? How are young people really progressing? So maybe, I don't know what the data is, but I'm just challenging every one of us to maybe start having that conversation and doing that comparison. In a way to learn, not in a way to maybe bring anybody down or bring any country down. So another thing I would also say is the fact that, yes, we have like a big population, which can be to our advantage and can also be to our disadvantage, because a bigger population means more resources to feed them, more resources to resource them, to skill them up. And for young people, where we have like over 144 million young people out of like 50 plus million people in Nigeria, that's a whole lot of people. And that's a whole lot of young people with different mentality, with different background, with different skill sets, and with different understanding of life, and with different religion beliefs and stuff like that. So we are going to see like diverse people and diverse output from them, truthfully. And what I would say is that, just to also add on to some of the things that have been said by my co-panelists, is that when we are designing policies, and when indeed we want to have something that is more holistic, that want to influence people positively, I mean, everybody positively, we need to be more people-centered. We're already doing it. I think the government is already doing it. I'm not going to say no to that. Lagos State government is also trying in their own best possible with the beautiful innovations and the ideas that they're coming up with. But I will also challenge them that to go a bit further, to be more people-centered. There are different levels of skills. Like I said earlier on, there are different levels of beliefs of these young people.
I didn't get
where they are, and build a sustainable, innovative,
I'm sorry, I have to cut you there, but we're pressed for time.
And capture their voices. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Adenike, and also thank you to Mr. Woshin, and of course our Honorable Commissioner here, Mr. Ogunlade, for your insights on today's discussion. I mean, this is, like you rightfully said, an advocacy and a call for action for all of Nigerian youth, and of course African youth as well. So again, congratulations to youth. And we look forward to all of the special
Happy World Youth Day, International Youth Day,
International Youth Day.
And to all the youthful-looking people here in black today, we all got the memo. Adenike, are you in black as well? Are we? Can we see? Was she in black? She's in. There we go. Complete. Thank you very much. Thank you once again.
Thank you once again.
Stay tuned. We've got more inside of Breakfast Extra. A very exciting Sunday. Hopefully our next guest wouldn't be in same color, but hey.
Don't hold your breath.
We'll be back. Welcome back. Now, in recent times, the laws of sedition have come under intense scrutiny, especially here in Nigeria, especially following the wave of protests that have swept through the country. This symbolic use of Russia's flag in the past protest has added an unusual dimension, raising questions about foreign influence and also the interpretation of national security laws. Sedition, once a tool to suppress dissent, is now at the center of debate about free speech and the right to protest in a democratic society.
And so as Nigeria navigates these turbulent times, it is crucial to understand the legal framework surrounding sedition and how it intersects with citizens' rights to express their dissatisfaction with governance. The complex interplay between national security and civil liberties poses significant questions about the future of protests and public dissent in Nigeria. And so joining us today to unpack these legal intricacies is Dr. Ayodeji Awobiyidi. He is a legal consultant and litigation expert, and he joins us live in the studio. Welcome to the program.
Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I really was looking forward to this conversation with you because we had an instance from yesterday.
He's been itching.
It was a very interesting one. Sedition is a very interesting term. And when you put sedition right next to treason, I don't know when you're getting out of jail. We had a conversation yesterday with Mr. Omolaye Shore, and we talked about the use of the Nigerian flag, or rather the use of the Russian flag in the protest in the north, and we refer to it as treason. As a lawyer, please would you clarify, is it treason to hoist the flag, not one of that nation, and also while burning that of that sovereign nation? What is that exactly?
I would say straight off that you are correct and Shower was wrong. That itself is treason. Okay, so when you do any act that is aimed at overthrowing your government, that is aimed at ensuring that you have some other foreign intervention in your society to basically overthrow the government of the day, then that's treason. So it's not sedition.
So one has to ask then, what are the legal implications of seeing that situation that we saw during the protest where certain Nigerians in Kaduna and Kano State were waving their flags? What's the legal implications on that?
So what ordinarily should happen is that they should be arrested and charged to court for treason or treasonable felony. And of course the punishment for that, for treason, is death.
Wow, that's serious.
Wait, what?
Yes, so for treason, the punishment is death. It's death penalty.
Oh, you're looking at me, I'm looking at him.
Yes, that's what the law says.
Now, that's how serious that is. Now,
yes.
Coming to sedition. Sedition is when you arouse using sentiment or whatever it is that you use, as long as you arouse a group of people to go against the governance, that's sedition. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct to the extent that sedition deals with the freedom of expression. So ideally, it's a colonial law that was passed to ensure that people were kept, suppressed by the colonial government. And it's since found its way into our laws now, such that it relates to any acts of inciting, of causing disaffection or ill will against the government of the day. So for instance, journalists usually have these charges, basically hanging on their heads every time they write. And of course, the courts have had to deal with it, particularly in the case of DPP and Chike Obi, when you wrote an article basically calling about, the bad governance at the time. That's during the 1960, 63, 66 period. And so these days, when journalists also write, they are also basically walking a thin line between freedom of expression and ill will against the government.
How thin is that line?
It's very thin, very thin, because the Constitution guarantees the right to freedom of expression. It's your fundamental right, it's guaranteed. So that means if the government is not doing well, like, almost everybody can feel that this government, is not doing as well as they should be doing, or as it promised to deliver on its promises, then people are within their rights to complain about how bad things have turned out.
Right, I have to ask you, right, because we're pressed for time. During the protests, watching those Nigerians wave the flag, and use insignia that is very foreign and not of Nigeria, one has to ask the question about, whether it can be legally interpreted as foreign interference or influence, right? So I'm going to make you ruminate on that. think about it,
yeah,
and then give us your answer.
We have to go to sports
because we're about to
now.
get to sports very quickly. So we're going to take a very short break to bring you sports. But again, the question is, can it be legally interpreted as interference or influence? Ruminate on that. We'll take a short break where we bring you sports. We have Favor Itwan on standby. Itua on standby. Stay with us.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to Sports Updates on Breakfast Extra. It's time, of course, to tell you the latest in the world of sport. And we'll be starting with our para-athletes, where a team of 24 Nigerian athletes have been penciled down and set to begin a training tour in Germany ahead of the 2024 Paralympic Games. Nigeria has consistently participated in the Summer Paralympics since its debut in 1960 in Rome, Italy. The country's Paralympic performance has been impressive, with a total of 80 medals to date, including 10 medals, 4 gold, 1 silver and 5 bronze from the Tokyo 2020 Games. To highlight the athletes' journey, the Paralympic Committee of Nigeria is creating a documentary about Team Nigeria's para-athletes. This will be filmed on August 12th and 13th, 2024, just before the team depart for the training in Saarbrücken, Germany. The 24 athletes Nigerian contingent will compete in 4 sports at the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games. Para-athletics, 5 athletes, para-badminton, 2 athletes, para-powerlifting, 9 athletes, and para-table tennis, 8 athletes. Interesting time ahead for para-athletes after the able-bodied athletes, of course, went to the Olympics and could not get Nigeria a medal. And now to the Paris 2024 Olympics, Faith Kipyegon underlined her status as the queen of the 1,500-meter bagging her 3rd successive Olympic title at the distance at the Paris 2024 Games on Saturday, becoming the first woman to win 3 Olympic gold in a single-track discipline. Each stride she made on the purple track of the Parc Stade de France took her closer to her legendary status. 3-time world 1,500-meter champion and world record holder Kipyegon produced a fearless run on the last lap to clock 3 minutes 51.29, taking 2 seconds off the Olympic record she set in Tokyo 3 years ago. World 2,000-meter record holder Jessica Hall, of course, of Australia, overtook world road mile champion Diribe Welteje to take silver, clocking 3 minutes 52.56, as Great Britain's Georgia Bell also passed Welteje close to the finish to earn bronze with a national record of 3 minutes 52.61 seconds. Congratulations to Faith Kipyegon. She is a master when it comes to the 1,500 meter, and I'm very, very sure she'll be getting a good welcome right there in Nairobi, Kenya. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more sports updates. Welcome back. You're still watching Breakfast Extra and, of course, Sports Updates. It's time to bring you more sports, and still sticking with athletics. It has to do with the United States of America in the men's 4x4, and Botswana, the storm to 2nd and 3rd fastest men's 4x4 performances of all time to take respective gold and silver at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games on Saturday. USA ran an Olympic record of 2 minutes 54.43 to take the title, just a 1/10 of a second ahead of Botswana in an African record, as they narrowly missed the world record of 2 minutes 54.29 set by USA in Stuttgart in 1993. There was also an area record for Great Britain and Northern Ireland, as they clocked 2 minutes 55.83 to improve the European record and claim bronze. USA secured a 19th Olympic title in the event, at 400-meter hurdles champion Ryle Benjamin brought the baton home in record time, while the Botswana team, anchored by 200-meter champion Letsile Tebogo with a 43.04 split, secured their nation's 4th ever Olympic medal. Following his run for the U.S. team in the heat, 16-year-old Quincy Wilson became the youngest ever men's Olympic gold medalist in athletics. Interesting time ahead for Botswana, especially with Letsile Tebogo after winning the 200-meter singles finals and, of course, the 4x4 men's for his country. And now to still talking Olympics, this time around to switch to basketball, where the United States won their 5th straight Olympic men's basketball crown on Saturday, holding off a battling host, France, 98-87, to take their tally of Olympic golds to 17. In a rematch of the Tokyo Olympics final 3 years ago, LeBron James And the US team, stacked with NBA stars, once again proved too much for France, despite the efforts of sensational NBA Rookie of the Year, Victor Wembanyama. France sliced a 14-year point deficit to 3 with 3 minutes 4 seconds to play on. Wembanyama's put back dunk, but Golden State Warriors star Stephen Curry drilled a three-pointer, 1 of 4 from him with less than 3 minutes remaining, and United States relentlessly powered to the finish. Curry finished with 8 three-pointers, including a rainbow over a leaping Wembanyama, and led the U.S. scoring with 24 points. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker added 15 points apiece, and James scored 14 with 6 rebounds, 10 assists, a steal, and a block. Fantastic one for the United States of America. I mean, having to win the final in front of the French President Emmanuel Macron, and of course doing it in the last of his Olympics, talking about LeBron James. This is his final Olympics, and capping it off with a medal. That's so fantastic for him. I'll be looking forward to release the memories and do a lot of things in his career. That wraps it up on the sports update of Breakfast Central. Of course, we'll move to Mazino standing by.
Favor, first off, I wanted to say there was a joke ongoing just before you took the sports news, and they said if we had our sports news strictly on the Nigerian achievements at the Olympics, our sports would be only 2 minutes today. I'm wondering how you felt about us coming back home without any medals this year.
I mean, abysmal, shameful, you want to say. In fact, it's something that you would not want to think of again, having to spend over 2.5 billion naira in preparations and in participation, and we did not win a medal. This is the worst outing since 2012 in London, when we failed to pick any medal. I mean, it's disastrous coming from our athletes who have had a fantastic run so far, coming to the biggest stage and not getting the medal. I think it's shameful. It shows you where our sport is in Nigeria at the moment and how bad it is, not having square pegs in square holes. We have square pegs in round holes.
Well, after 12 billion naira spent for
2.5 billion.
2.5 billion, my apologies. 2.5 billion naira spent for our athletes to be at Paris. I heard a story about a cyclist, is this true, who had to, borrow a bicycle to run his race? Is that correct?
Well, that's of course for SA. I mean, the story is not what it is on social media, but this is the explanation.
Clarify, please.
First of all, she was supposed to compete in her own race. She had the bicycle. Then there was a particular event in cycling. She was only told about the event 2 weeks before the event. That's because Egypt were not allowed to compete. They were disqualified. So they gave Nigeria the available slot and say, okay, Nigeria, can you come and participate in this event? You have 2 weeks to prepare for the event. Now, the question is, the ministry is saying, if they had to get a bike for that particular event, it would take 2 months from ordering and shipping the bike to get to the games.
So before
now, she had prepared to participate in that particular event, not the one she was penciled down to participate in, just 2 weeks to that particular event.
It's really shameful, Favor, because I know that there are Nigerians, Nigerian nationalities who represented other countries that actually went farther than individual Nigerians went in the Olympics. That goes to show exactly what's happening in our sports in Nigeria, that we're not focused at all and not giving it all we can.
Exactly. When you don't have the enabling environment, you don't have top-notch facilities, you keep losing, Nigerians go represent other countries. There is, of course, a lady in Bahrain. She's Al Nasawa. She's an Igbo lady. She's a Nigerian, and of course, she changed her name from a Nigerian name to an Arab name to compete, of course, for Bahrain. We also have other athletes in Great Britain representing Great Britain. Even in Italy, we have Nigerians in Italy who picked medals. Not also forgetting Ireland. There's a lady called Rashidat Adeleke. She represents Ireland in I think 200 meters or hurdles, as the case may be. That's to show you how we've not taken sports so serious. And one lady that remains in our minds is Annette. 4 years ago, she came to Nigeria to represent Nigeria. We did not allow her to compete at the Tokyo Olympic Games. She represented USA this time, and she won a silver.
Well, I guess if we look at all of them, we can't say Nigeria tried. I guess.
Exactly. That's what it is.
Thank you very much, Sports Paparazzo, a.k.a. Favor there for you. Thank you for bringing us sports this morning.
Thank you very much, Mazino.
Yes, and we go now straight into the news, where we begin in West Africa, Nigeria, where businessman Tony Elumelu says the government and security agents in Nigeria should be able to tell Nigerians those behind the theft of the country's crude oil, especially using vessels that move through the territorial waters. Elumelu stated this in an interview published by the Financial Times. Ilumelu, who dreads oil theft, said the menace contributes to the divestment of international oil companies in Nigeria. And still on endeavors in Nigeria, Nigerian investigative journalist David Hundeyin has accused an international non-governmental organization, Dialogue Earth, of offering him an 800,000 naira bribe to smear the world's largest single-train refinery, Dangote Refinery. In a lengthy post on his X account on Saturday, August 10th, 2024, Hundeyin detailed how the NGO reached out to him sometime last week with a brief that required him to write a negative review about the Dangote Refinery using climate change and environmental concerns as justifications. Join us later on in the show as we speak with David Hundeyin himself. Now let's also tell you that victims whose properties were damaged during the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited's demolition operation are requesting payment in excess of 160 billion naira. Some structures were demolished along the pipeline and Tanke Road Ilorin by the NNPC Limited in 2018 for the right-of-way. They alleged that 976 structures were demolished by the Nigerian Army engineers on the order of the National Oil Company. Tokwe Ajetumobi, who spoke on behalf of the victims, disclosed that the House of Representatives Public Petitions Committee had passed a resolution in 2019 that the NNPC assess the value of the damaged properties and negotiate with the victims. They, however, alleged that the NNPCL had declined. And that's all the headlines this hour here inside of Breakfast Extra. We have our special guest here as we discuss the law of sedition. So I'm just going to go right back into the studio with our guest and, of course, Judith here with us.
Yes, indeed. Our guest today is Dr. Ayodeji Owubiyidi. He is a legal consultant and litigation expert, and we'll be talking about sedition and the Russian flag that we saw being flown or hoisted during the #EndBadGovernance protests. Now, a day after the 10 days plan protest, we saw what I didn't think would have ever happened in Nigerian history. And before the news and, of course, the sports news, I asked a question, which is, from a legal standpoint, seeing that being hoisted, would that be interpreted as influenced or interference?
Oh, thank you for the question. I wouldn't say that the interference from Russia. Most likely it's what you have politicians at play, trying to seize the opportunity to protest against the government of the day. Don't forget that we already have a government that was elected democratically, whether or not we like the outcome. So no Nigerian, because Nigeria is a sovereign state, no Nigerian should threaten the sovereignty of the country through such overt acts of hoisting the flag of a foreign nation in Nigeria and then adding that the government must go. I mean, you watch the video, you would hear people say, oh, Tinubu must go, and just basically trying to incite people against the government. So I honestly would not say Russia, and of course you've seen the Russian government, the ambassador has sent a message saying that they are basically not involved in any of it, so just to clarify that position. So it's the politicians that play, and I think that the DSS and the relevant agencies of the government should go ahead and fish out those elements. I read a report that the tailors who were sewing the flags have been arrested, other people who also involved have been arrested. So the government should go ahead and do the needful. And don't forget that for treason, you need to bring the charge against such people within 2 years of the offense. In other words, if you don't bring the action between now and 2 years' time, you can't bring it again. So they need to go after them and send a clear message, because you will notice that the engagements with the Russian flag was basically mostly in the north. I didn't see any of such in the south. So, and this also undermines why people usually are very wary of protests in Nigeria, because if you have a protest, it should be peaceful ordinarily, but there are elements who always want to seize the opportunity to cause havoc and to wreak mayhem in society.
I'm glad you said that, because one thing we've seen with protests, especially, I'll always use the Arab Spring Uprising, is that it really set the stage for interference when it comes to geopolitics and those who have, selfish interest in interfering that as well. I mean, I've asked this question, and I will ask you from a legal point standpoint and seeing history, because history is a lesson. We must learn from history. How best can You know, can peaceful protesters protest and it not being encroached on, you know, by foreign elements who have their selfish interests and use that as a center stage to carry out their own master plan?
Very good question. I think that for protests in Nigeria, because the history is quite clear, like you've said, about how it's been hijacked at different stages, is for the government to create an enabling environment, in other words, without fear or intimidation, to say, okay, well, I'm going to offer you protection to protest. So if the government officials or government agencies, law enforcement are present, once they see the flags being handed out, they can easily apprehend the persons who are in charge of handing out the flags and then do their investigation and prosecute. But if you are not present and you allow these people who have the desire to cause havoc or to wreak mayhem in society the freedom to do as they please, then you'll be handicapped. And you saw that with the protests in the north, because you had fewer policemen and you had people who were largely out there protesting, but they had the flags. Hungry, actually, yes, but hungry and angry. Because, I mean, this issue really, I mean, it's across board, across all classes of society. So it's not just about the poor.
Well, but let me jump in there. You mentioned the word poor. These people are being, let me use your word, influenced to carry these flags and all. They're being taken advantage of. Their hunger is being taken advantage of. What responsibility or whose responsibility is it to make people, the populace, know that this is treason, this is sedition? Because you said a statement here that even surprised both of us, noting that the penalty for treason is actually death. That was surprising. I'm sure it's surprising to a lot of people watching. Whose responsibility is it to let the people know? Because if I'm hungry, less educated, and I find someone who perhaps maybe says, hey, to do this or to put food on your table, do this. Am I going to get food? Yes. Okay, fine, I'm going to do it. They're being influenced. Whose responsibility?
So ignorance of the law is no excuse. So that you did not know that a law exists, it doesn't excuse your actions.
I hear that all the time from traffic agents. You know, like a guy don't pass one way. It's not.
Yes. So the law is there. The law is there. It's there. It's been there It's been there since I was born. It's been there forever. The law of treason. It's there. The penalty, the punishment is there. But it's more about education, legal education. Letting people know what we're doing now is legal education for those who are listening. That if you engage in these actions, it's like, you know, the punishment for it is quite clear. It's like somebody gives you a gun because you're angry and you're hungry and says, take this gun, go and wield it at the bus stop. That in itself, I mean...
But then again, a gun is... I mean, you understand what I mean? A gun is a weapon.
It's a gun.
It's a gun. A gun is a gun.
Yeah.
If I saw that, I'm like, there's something wrong with this.
Exactly.
And I'm not educated.
A foreign flag.
Like a foreign flag, and I'm not educated. I'm like, okay, it's just ordinary cloth, Nabi. I might do that. So what you're saying is that if the law of the land was to follow its full extent, those ignorant people, those poor, ignorant, hungry people who hoisted the flag, if the law was supposed to go its full extent, would they be what's the word? Would they be sentenced to death?
Okay, so in criminal law, there are two important elements that need to happen before you can say a person can be guilty of an offense. The first one is called the mens rea. The mens rea, that's the mental element of the offense, that you knowingly did what you did. The other one is the actus reus, which is the action itself. Now, for a lot of those people who hoisted the flag, the foreign flag of Russia in Nigeria, the action is there, but they didn't know what they were doing. Is the question that needs to be answered, the mental element of the offense. So that's where the prosecution would need to be able to establish that they knew that what they were doing was actually to incite the people against the government, to call for an overthrow of the government. So if they did not know, for instance, like those children that had the flags with them, they will be detained at the pleasure of the president in the interim until an investigation as to whether they knew. So once you are not able to establish that they knew what they were doing, that in other words, they did not know that by hoisting the flag, they had no intention to call for an overthrow of the government, then that's different. But there were those who actively knew what they were doing. Those who gave interviews to other stations who were reported as having said that the government needs to go and that Russia needs to intervene in the current economic situation of Nigeria. Those ones knew what they were doing.
The law, you said that the law, the trickles of our sedition law, as well as the treasonable laws that we have in our law and constitution, were elements that were borrowed from the colonial time. So how then can we restructure or redo our law? What's the word that I'm looking for? Potential reforms of our law to ensure that it aligns with our democratic values?
Okay, so the first one, as it relates to sedition, you know that the government, that's the weapon that the government has to protect itself.
A bit deliberate.
From journalists, and because if you didn't have the law of sedition, for instance, I mean, you could write anything about the government and get away with it, and you will say it's free speech. But what the Supreme Court has said is that there's a position for fair criticism. In other words, if you write something about the government and you're being constructive in what you are saying, so you say, oh, this policy that you introduced is not working, but I offer this suggestion as a solution to help the government advance the policy and reform the policy, then that's fair.
Okay.
But when you basically just go to town and with the aim of ensuring that the government is basically not loved by the people anymore, then there's a problem.
Dr. Ayobidi, I want to say thank you for the education.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Because that's a lot, actually. I'm hoping that people will go back and watch.
And also, just be mindful of, if they come and say, no, there's nothing like it.
Your hunger is not an excuse.
It's not. Ignorance is not an excuse.
Hunger is not an excuse.
So don't even try it. Yeah. Anyway, Dr.
Ayobidi,
we appreciate you for doing this with us. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, you're watching Breakfast Extra right here on News Central Television. We've been talking about the law of sedition and so much more. Take a short break. When we come back on the other side, there is plenty more important conversation and education lined up for you. Stay with us. Well, this conversation we're about to have is about light-skinned people. No, not really. It's what we're pressing to. We're going to be delving into a pressing issue that's sweeping across the nation, and it's the skin bleaching epidemic. What was once a beauty trend has now escalated into a national health crisis, with millions of Nigerians risking their lives in pursuit of lighter skin. So from bustling cities to rural villages, skin lightening products have become a common sight. But behind the promise of a fairer complexion, like mine, lies a dark reality. Dermatologists are sounding the alarm, warning of severe health risks ranging from skin cancer to liver damage. And so our News Central's correspondent Adeshewa Odushoga filed in this report over the past week. And let's take a look at the rate of which users are growing in Nigeria.
So I'm being told that we'll bring that package after we meet our guest. But I do not know why Judith felt attacked. However...
No, I don't. That's a joke. I don't feel attacking anything.
We explore the impact of this trend on the nation's health as we introduce our guest here, Dr. Oshigbeme Audu, renowned dermatologist who's also been in the forefront of this kind of discussion from over the years. Dr. Audu, you're welcome again here on Breakfast Extra.
Thanks for having me. I hope I come through okay, because
yes, you're perfect. You're good.
It's slightly the network.
Great. So, doctor, being an expert and one blessed with plenty of melanin, how dangerous might it be to want to alter one's skin using substance, one or the other, whether ingested or applied?
I'm so glad this topic is being brought up, because it's something that I've trying for the very longest to try and get us to address in the country. Nigeria is by far the largest, the country with the largest amount of bleaching practice I'm talking about unhealthy bleaching practice in Africa. And the damages range from simple things like increasing your risk of infection, because a lot of the bleaching products use high-dose steroids, which thin your skin. It affects your own body's ability to make your natural steroids, which help you fight infections and help you in times of danger and things like that, to thinning the skin, to things like what we call ochronosis, which is a permanent skin damage that you can do. That I thought now there's no cure. To liver damage, to brain damage, to things that affect people's ability to have children. It's wide-ranging. And now we're now seeing presence of skin cancer, like what we call melanoma in Black people. So it's wide-ranging and very hazardous.
Yeah, Dr. Aldo, I have to ask, right? Besides those who actively go searching for skin lightening products, there are people who also will just buy, do not know and just buy things off the rack, right? Just buy things off the shelf and they're going on their way. And so for those, this also is for the sake of advocacy and education for our viewers who do not know the ingredients to look out for these products, right? They just say fairer, smoother skin. That's always the tagline. Fairer, turning skin, or fairer, smoother skin. So what are the most active ingredients in skin lightening products, and just so that they can be on the lookout for that active ingredient, and how does it affect, you know, their skin over time? In the science to look out for, yeah.
And another great way to bring it, part of the problem for where we are at is multifaceted. For the very longest time, there's been a lack of education for the general public. Our black skin, part of the effect of damage to the black skin or darker skin types is hyperpigmentation. So we get acne, which is a condition that affects us the most in the world, and it leaves behind dark skin. So a lot of people are also looking for solutions to problems, and hence they tend to what is prevalent, which is also, unfortunately, most of it that is easily accessible are the bleaching creams. The negative things in the bleaching creams are steroids, but unfortunately, a lot of it is masked. You hardly see the products being advertised with the right names. But however, you do see names like hydroquinone, at best, that should be avoided. We do use that in dermatology, but please, that should be guided by a dermatologist or a skin care expert. So hydroquinone being one of them, steroids like Dermovate, those are no-nos. They should be only under prescription. Mercury, those are dangerous things. And if you see anything with mercury, those are dangerous things to avoid. On the healthier side, things like azelaic acid, that's good. That helps with hyperpigmentation where you're trying to correct. Alpha-arbutin, which is a naturally occurring thing, can help with dealing with certain things. But with hyperpigmentation, mulberry, licorice.
A dark reality. Dermatologists are sounding the alarm, warning of severe health risks ranging from skin cancer to liver damage. And so our News Central's correspondent Adeshewa Odushoga filed in this report over the past week. And let's take a look at the rate of which users are growing in Nigeria.
So I'm being told that we'll bring that package after we meet our guest. But I do not know why Judith felt attacked. However,
no, I don't. That's a joke. I don't feel attacking anything.
We explore the impact of this trend on the nation's health as we introduce our guest here, Dr. Osigbeme Audu, renowned dermatologist who's also been in the forefront of this kind of discussion from over the years. Dr. Audu, you're welcome again here on Breakfast Extra.
Thanks for having me. I hope I come through okay, because
yes, you're perfect. You're good.
It's slightly late in the network.
Great. So, doctor, being an expert and one blessed with plenty of melanin, how dangerous might it be to want to alter one's skin using substance, one or the other, whether ingested or applied?
I'm so glad this topic is being brought up, because it's something that I've tried for the very longest to try and get us to address in the country. Nigeria is by far the largest, the country with the largest amount of bleaching practice. I'm talking about unhealthy bleaching practice in Africa. And the damages range from simple things like increasing your risk of infection, because a lot of the bleaching products use high-dose steroids, which thin your skin. It affects your own body's ability to make your natural steroids, which help you fight infections and help you in times of danger and things like that, to thinning the skin, to things like what we call ochronosis, which is a permanent skin damage that you can do. I thought now there's no cure. To liver damage, to brain damage, to things that affect people's ability to have children. It's wide-ranging. And now we're now seeing presence of skin cancer, like what we call melanoma in Black people. So it's wide-ranging and very hazardous.
Yeah, Dr. Aldo, I have to ask, right? Besides those who actively go searching for skin lightening products, there are people who also will just buy, do not know and just buy things off the rack, right? Just buy things off the shelf and they're going on their way. And so for those, this also is for the sake of advocacy and education for our viewers who do not know the ingredients to look out for these products, right? They just say fairer, smoother skin. That's always the tagline. Fairer, turning skin, or fairer, smoother skin. So what are the most active ingredients in skin lightening products, and just so that they can be on the lookout for that active ingredient, and how does it affect, their skin over time? In the signs to look out for, yeah.
And another great way to bring it, part of the problem for where we are at is multifaceted. For the very longest time, there's been a lack of education for the general public. Our black skin, part of the effect of damage to the black skin or darker skin types is hyperpigmentation. So we get acne, which is a condition that affects us the most in the world, and it leaves behind dark skin. So a lot of people are also looking for solutions to problems, and hence they tend to what is prevalent, which is also, unfortunately, most of it that is easily accessible are the bleaching creams. The negative things in the bleaching creams are steroids, but unfortunately, a lot of it is masked. You hardly see the products being advertised with the right names. But however, you do see names like hydroquinone, at best, that should be avoided. We do use that in dermatology, but please, that should be guided by a dermatologist or a skin care expert. So hydroquinone being one of them, steroids like Dermovate, those are no-nos. They should be only under prescription. Mercury, those are dangerous things. And if you see anything with mercury, those are dangerous things to avoid. On the healthier side, things like azelaic acid, that's good. That helps with hyperpigmentation where you're trying to correct. Alpha-arbutin, which is a naturally occurring thing, can help with dealing with certain things, but with hyperpigmentation, mulberry, licorice, kojic acid. So those are the more healthier hyperpigmenting preventing products, if I were to use that term, or melanin prevent. But they don't do it to the extent that much people are looking for. In other words, so people who have the intention to change their skin tone, you wouldn't get that with any of these products. And I think that's what they need people to go back to looking for, the more unhealthy things that in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're 1 or 2 shades lighter.
Doctor, yeah, we're pressed with time, so I have to ask, besides liver damage, skin cancer, which are all long-term health risks, right? What are some of other health risks that are associated with, bleaching? And also, how then do you know the signs, when you see that you have gone overboard?
So quite quickly, if you use any product and within a week or two, your skin is very light or it's 1 or 2 shades lighter, that's a red flag. Because a lot of the bad ones thin the skin down. The steroids constrict the vessels, so it gives you that quick lightening effect. So anything that happens very quickly over 2, 3 weeks, 1 month, alarm bells. Stretch marks is a side effect. Quite quickly, you'll notice that the skin is thin and you start developing early signs of stretch marks developing, which then obviously get worse. So once you have anything that does anything too quick, in the dermatology or skin health, everything has time. It's nothing works over 1, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in that regard. It's something that you need at least 12 weeks, 1 skin cycle to see effects. So that's the quick,
signs
way to look at big sign, yeah.
Right. I mean, and just to wrap up the show here, because we're out of time, I have to ask about, I'm seeing the signs. You've just described them to me. I'm watching and I'm seeing all the signs that I'm most likely using a skin lightening product, and I'm afraid for the long-term, effects that this might have. But I also have all the dermatitis on my face. What is the correctional step or treatment that I need to go to reverse back my skin back to somewhat healthy state?
I think speak to an expert. Stop first and then speak to someone to guide you. Speak to somebody who's got, you wouldn't, if you had high blood pressure, you had diabetes, you wouldn't try and fix it on your own. You would want to go see a doctor. If you had an infection, you want to go see a doctor. I think be guided by somebody who's in the know. But first things first, stop. If you're not going to do anything at all, use sunscreen. Sunscreen helps to prevent worsening of, even if it doesn't correct, it will help prevent worsening of any condition that is leading to hyperpigmentation. Well, I'm not going to say any, but most of them. So if you will do anything, just grab a sunscreen, stop all these other practices, and then try and get someone to guide you. I think because first there needs to be a diagnosis of what's going on, and then you can then approach it with the understanding of what's going on. You can then approach the solution.
Okay,
Dr. Audu, thank you very much for giving us that much needed information regarding skin bleaching and how it's very detrimental to general health. Thank you, as always.
Thanks for having me again. Cheers.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys.
Bye.
So we're going to move straight now into our next big story, and big story indeed it is. We investigate shocking revelations by Nigerian investigative journalist David Hundeyin, who recently exposed an attempt to bribe him with 800,000 naira to smear the Dangote refinery. We'll bring you all this information after this break. Welcome back. Now, as said from before, we investigate the shocking revelations by Nigerian investigative journalist David Hundeyin, who recently exposed an attempt to bribe him with 800,000 naira to smear the Dangote refinery. According to Hundeyin, the bribe was offered by a foreign NGO seeking to tarnish the image of one of Africa's largest and most ambitious industrial projects. The story underscores the length at which entities might go to manipulate public perception and also critical role of journalists in the media.
So in an era where misinformation can easily sway public opinion, Hundeyin's refusal to accept the bribe and his commitment to ethical journalism are commendable. But these incidents raises important questions about the integrity of information circulating in the public sphere and the pressures faced by journalists in their pursuit of the truth. The Dangote refinery, a symbol of economic progress for Nigeria, has now become the focal point of a sinister plot that could have far-reaching implications.
So as we unravel on both sides this story, it's essential to consider the broader context in which these events are unfolding. What does this attempt mean? And how exactly did this interaction go between our guest today and whichever NGO this was? We now have joining us the journalist himself, David Hundeyin. Good morning and thank you for joining us, David.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. David, first off, we saw your very lengthy X post up on X, and it was very alarming, to say the least. 800,000 naira for a story on the Dangote refinery. I'm going to come back to that figure, but first give us your account of how you were approached by this INGO.
Okay, so someone reached out to me on Twitter, X as they call it now, with a direct message asking if I'd be open to doing an analysis piece on the Dangote refinery. Now, that in itself is not such a rare occurrence. It's fairly common for actors within several media and NGO spaces to reach out to me asking if I'm open to, or if I'm available for a commission piece. It's quite a common thing. But in this instance, something about the wording of the way this message was presented sort of struck me as odd. It almost seemed as if, well, not almost, it seemed as if the person didn't want this to become public. The fact that there was some sort of communication between us, and it almost seemed like it was sort of a hush-hush thing. And if you're open to this, there was lots of that insinuation that there's something about this that is in some way secret or implied to be secret. So I accepted the offer. I said, okay, cool, send me an email. So they sent me a brief. And when I opened the brief, which I shared the document with you, it then very quickly became clear why this communication was done in such a shady manner, because unlike a regular brief for a commissioned piece where essentially the only thing that is presented to the writer is maybe a suggested headline and maybe one or two paragraphs of you know um, suggested themes or whatever in the story. This was a full and comprehensive outline of what the story was meant to be, who the sources in the story are meant to be, how those sources should be cited, how certain things should be framed and worded. This was a story where I was essentially just supposed to color in the blanks, fill in the gaps, and put my name on it. And it also became very clear that this story was intended to use the language of environmental activism and concern about climate change and Nigeria's energy transition commitments and all those related things. So essentially discredit the existence of Dangote refinery, to say that this refinery basically shouldn't exist. That something is wrong with the existence of this refinery. So I'm sure you're going to show the viewers the first line of this brief document, where something along the lines of um, following the fire incident at Dangote refinery, this raises questions about blah 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 blah, especially in the light of Nigeria's energy transition, yada yada yada. So the very clear inference that was to be made in this story is that, based on the commitments that Nigeria has made at the COP28 or such other climate agreements that Nigeria is a signatory to, that Nigeria basically should not be supporting the opening of a petroleum refinery, because use of anything to do with fossil fuel doesn't fit with Nigeria's stated environmental goals, which as someone who has a very sort of keen interest and a significant amount of knowledge within the African development space, this immediately rang alarm bells, because one of the sort of ongoing controversies within the African development space, for anyone who has any knowledge of it, is this deep-seated attempt to force this thing called a green transition on Africa, which is the world's poorest continent, the world's least energy secure continent, despite having some of the world's largest and relatively cheap energy reserves to explore. So basically, the idea is that any development economist or development practitioner will tell you that the amount of energy that is generated and consumed in an economy is directly proportional and positively correlated to the amount of economic activity and economic growth that takes place in that economy. To put it very simply, the more power or energy that is consumed within your economy, the bigger your economy is, and the bigger your economy is, the wealthier your people are. It's just that simple. It's a 2 + 2 = 4 kind of calculation, nothing complicated about it. So basically, if you're a poor African economy, like most countries on the continent are, your number one priority should be to ensure that your energy reserves are exploited as much as possible, so you can generate and consume as much energy as possible, which is what will drive your industrialization and will lift you out of poverty and eventually, into the process of wealth creation. This is very well known, within the development space. However, of recent, over the past decade, there has been this very sly and snide and mischievous attempt to use credible concerns about the environment and to use a series of international climate agreements to essentially browbeat or bully or bulldoze Africa into not making use of its own energy reserves, and instead going after this completely unclear, undefined, and thoroughly inadequate chimera called green energy. To put this in perspective, green energy is an idea that not even the developed world has been able to figure out, right? Something like 40% of the electricity that is still being consumed across most developed economies still comes from coal, which is pretty much the dirtiest fuel there is on the planet, bar none, right? The UK burns coal. Germany burns coal, Japan burns coal, the US burns a lot of coal, right? There is there is no developed economy that runs off green energy inputs and renewables. It simply doesn't exist because even the technology, um, to all intents and purposes, is still very much under development. Right. So if the developed economies, the wealthy economies have not been able to figure out how to wean themselves off fossil fuels, why on earth would it then be Africa's responsibility, which is already the poorest continent in the world, which desperately needs um, an injection of energy into its economies? Why on earth would it be Africa's responsibility then to transition away from fossil fuel and into this completely unclear and undefined thing called renewable energy? So instantly, I smelled a rat. That this article, the purpose of this article is to co-opt the voice of a local commentator in Nigeria to attack the existence of this oil refinery. The article, the purpose of the brief was basically to write an article that says that Dangote refinery is bad for the environment, right? Because Nigeria shouldn't be doing anything that has to do with fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are bad. And that based on Nigeria's own commitments, which it has gotten into in all these several climate agreements and accords and whatnot that it has signed up to, under these agreements, basically Dangote refinery should not exist. And the danger of allowing my name to be put on such an article is not so much that, okay, because I put, it's not as if because I wrote an article, anything's going to happen to Dangote refinery. I'm not that important. However, what it does is that it starts to feed a narrative. And I'm sure I was not the only one that these people would have reached out to. The NGO, by the way, is called Dialogue Earth. It used to be known as the China Dialogue Trust. It's now known as Dialogue Earth. It's based in London. The CEO is an academic, is a professor at the University of Oxford, and it's basically an NGO that focuses on climate issues, and for whatever reason, happens to only be active in the global south. So it's not an NGO that focuses on climate issues where climate issues are actually an issue, which is in the developed world, right? Because they are the ones who have all of the emissions. They are the ones who burn all the fossil fuels. They are the ones who emit all the carbon. But this NGO doesn't have any business with them. This NGO is only focused on Africa and the Philippines and China and India. It's the global south that this NGO concerns itself with. And I took a look at the entities funding this NGO. Who is the man behind the curtain? Because I think that's what a journalist is supposed to do. And it turns out that, well, I mean, there are several institutions and there are several people, but the two names
stop you there, David. We're hoping that you can hear us. We've been trying to get your attention for a very long while. Please, if you would make your responses brief, and if you would listen out for our instruction, would really appreciate that. Thank you very much, David. Judith, you were going to ask.
Yeah, David, I was going to ask about the NGO. You were making comments about how, this seems like the West approach to try to smear, not just smear, but also stop somewhat industrialization of Africa as well. And when it comes to fossil fuel, them stopping fossil fuel, the claim of, climate action and the harm to environment, etc., etc. But I must ask about, Dialogue Africa, the firm that reached out to you. You're an investigative journalist. Have you been able to do a lot more digging on this company and to see that if this is just a targeted thing to Dangote refinery or a targeted thing to the entirety of Africa or even West Africa? Because it seems like, looking from the outside looking in, and even from a layman or just someone who's a passerby, this seems like is why Dangote refinery? They're just starting out. They haven't done anything. Why Dangote refinery? Why not other bigger refineries across Africa or other African companies that are investing heavily in fossil fuel and refining?
So this NGO, which is known as Dialogue Earth, not Dialogue Africa, by the way, Dialogue Earth, it used to be known as the China Dialogue Trust. It started off as a climate-focused NGO, which for whatever reason was focused almost exclusively on China, because apparently China is where the majority of the world's manufacturing takes place, the world's production takes place, and it's also where the majority of the world's emissions happen to originate from. It's where a lot of trees are cut down for the sake of industrial agriculture and industrial processes and whatnot. So this NGO originally was focused on China, and as far as it's possible to tell, when you dig into the work of this NGO, which, by the way, I think I actually shared a link on my Twitter handle where people can actually take a look at some of the projects that it's been funded to do. I think in the images you were sharing, some of those projects were listed as well. Some of the Ford Foundation funding.
All right, David, we've got so
way
many questions to ask you. So I'm going to go ahead and read something that you posted only just, it was this year, on the 21st of July. This was your response to a post where Dangote had said, I am no longer interested in going into steel development. I'm not the only Nigerian. There are Nigerians that may even have more cash than I do. They should go into that area of business. Now, your response was, Aliko Dangote is a crony capitalist whose parasitic practices stunts the economy instead of growing it. That is true, you said. However, the ongoing extrajudicial destruction of the Dangote business organization by the Tinubu regime is not at all something to celebrate. Now, you spoke very harshly, quite frankly, about the Dangote industries here in the streets. So why all of a sudden this, what seems like support for them, or at least not wanting to tarnish their image because of certain bribe, the allegations that you're bringing against this Dialogue Earth NGO? Why the 180?
So again, so it's not a 180, but again, this is something much bigger than Dangote. Now, I obviously have certain opinions. I hold certain opinions about Dangote's business practices, and those opinions have not changed. It is still very much something that uses the levers of crony capitalism to build monopolies. That is still true. However, that being said, this refinery specifically is, objectively speaking, an important piece of national infrastructure. If Dangote hadn't built a refinery, someone else would have had to, because Nigeria's basic economic problem still is that it exports raw materials cheaply and imports refined products at a more expensive price, which means that we're perennially running at a deficit and our currency is perennially sliding, right? So for such a refinery to exist and to function means that dynamic will be reversed, which is in Nigeria's economic interest, which is in my economic interest.
Okay.
So the fact that someone that I happen to have an ideological difference with is running that refinery, frankly, isn't really that important right now. There are bigger things at play.
Bigger things at play. Speaking of bigger things at play, there have been criticism. There's been quite mixed reactions from analysts and critics alike who have reacted to this news since you broke it yesterday or the day after. And many have, called you out saying that you claiming that you were offered 800,000 naira, which is about $500, to undermine the billions of dollars worth of Dangote refinery seems untrue, unfetched, seems miserly for a journalist of your repute, or as you purport to be. What would you say to those criticisms?
I mean, I shared the brief documents with you, so it's there in black and white, the fee that was offered. So I really don't know what to say.
What they say is that it's small. They claim that why all this ruse? I mean, just to speak on that particularly, they're saying that, because I'm looking at a tweet here from you again. It says, you posted this on Twitter, X, Dangote refinery, in quotation mark, is a small cartel's political tool used to crowbar their way into becoming sole energy provider for 200 million people. Whether it refines a single drop of oil or not is completely unimportant to them. It might never actually work at Dangote Steel Mill Pro Max. And so that statement from you now being reached out to write an article damaging Dangote refinery, receiving $500. The critics have said all of these statements. I would like for you to give a more robust, response to them.
Well, again, as I said previously, two things can be true at the same time. I do have certain opinions about the business practices and the business model of the wider Dangote business organization and Dangote refinery. And at the time that I wrote that tweet, it was still very much in question as to whether there was in fact going to be a functioning refinery. The context there is that when the previous president left office, I believe it was on May 26 last year, this refinery was commissioned, even though it was very clear that it was nowhere close to being completed. I mean, I had people who worked there, and it all seemed like there was a lot of political gamesmanship going on. So that was the context for that tweet, that there's something else at play here. However, to Dangote's credit, the truth is well, maybe it's not refining PMS yet, which is what everyone is waiting for, but it has actually refined fuel. So it's been putting out gas oil, and it's been putting out, I think, jet fuel, and to a lesser extent, diesel for quite a few months. So it is functioning, and not just functioning, it has also started making an impact even in the European market. So the dynamics of the situation have changed. So putting that into context now, seeing that it's no longer just a piece of a promise in the middle of nowhere, but it's now actually producing something, and it's actually making a dent in that economic dynamic that I described earlier. And then at this moment in time, this NGO suddenly chooses to reach out to me to write something that could be used as part of like a narrative astroturfing effort.
But David, would you say that David, would you say that, well, judging from precedents, you writing against the Dangote refineries from before perhaps attracted this NGO to your writing, and perhaps maybe that's why they reached out to you? That's one. On the other hand, have you been reached out to, whether before you put out this information or after you put out this information, have you been reached out to by the Dangote refineries or anybody representing Dangote refineries?
So the answer to the first question is, I believe yes. I think the reason the calculation was made that maybe this person is going to be sympathetic to this project that we're trying to push is maybe because he has some personal vendetta or something against Dangote. So I believe maybe that's why they chose to reach out to me. Unfortunately for them, I've never had a personal vendetta against Dangote or anyone, you know, and I've always been very open about what my motivations are and where my interests lie. So here we are. And secondly, no one officially has reached out. Obviously, I have people that I speak to back channel, but in an official capacity, nobody has reached out to me now.
Right. Now, I have to ask you, and this is about the steps after, when you declined, did you decline to put out this this article in your name and also to receive the money? Of course, you said you haven't, but then were there follow-up threats or incentives to lure you or to ensure that you align or ensure that you cooperate with the NGO?
No, it's really not that. This is not a James Bond plot. It's simply that after receiving the email and reading the brief and instantly understanding what this is about and where this is coming from and what the motivation for this is, I instantly knew that there's no way I'm going to put my name on this sort of thing. There's no way I'm going to be part of this. And I really had nothing to say. I mean, I didn't even respond saying, okay, I'm not doing this, and this is why. I didn't feel like there was any need to explain anything to anyone. I just basically went and made it public.
Right. And lastly, I asked this question earlier, but I have to ask you again because we're pressed for time and we really have to go. But with Dialogue Earth, have you seen the NGO make any move? I mean, you're an investigative journalist. Have you seen them make any move specific to other West African countries, or is it just Dangote Refinery and Nigeria?
So they're
very
not
quickly, because we're pressed for
so
time.
much active in West Africa yet, but it must be noted, however, that the country office of this NGO that sent me this email is actually in Nairobi, Kenya, which, as I'm sure you know, is like the NGO capital of Africa. So I'm guessing they're more active. They're trying to become more active in the African space now. I don't think they have a foothold in West Africa yet because they're operating from Nairobi. But I think even just for the fact that this NGO, which has only just started becoming
David
active in
Hundeyin,
Africa, has
I am
only
so
recently
sorry.
opened
But I'm being told by the producers and director that we must end because we are out of time. It's a robust conversation we've had, and I want to say thank you very much for actually agreeing to be on the show here today to unpack this story which you released yesterday. Thank you very much indeed, David, and we appreciate your presence.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You did a very, very big story there. Unfortunately, we didn't have plenty of time to absolutely finish it up, but I'm sure that we're still going to have him on as guests, if not on this show, on other shows here on News Central TV.
Yes, indeed. It's been quite the weekend with you, joining us from Saturday down to Sunday, 8 a.m. in the morning, very much down to this hour. But we do have to go. But remember, you keep your dial on here because coming up next after this is In the Game. And of course, at the top of the hour will be the news. And Mazina is going to be here to bring you the news at 12 noon. But until then, it's good night and bye for us.
Bye-bye, everybody.